broken deep inside with so much fear.
What have we done to deserve so much pain? Amanye amaphupho dadewethu awafezekanga. Is it my power that makes you weak? Oh, is it my mind that makes you so scared? Senzeni na, senzeni na, senzeni na, senzeni na. Look into my eyes. Nami ngumuntu can't deserve it below. Look into my maybe you need to be that role model you never had, ukuze nabantwana bafunde kuwe. Ribonchenzela rishirele jengmasuku.
Zethembe uzithanda, uthandise, uthanda abantwana. Khulisa abantwana ngendlela ofuna bahambe ngayo.
Unakhalisi lilo, sukhela ukukhala. Oh, senzeni na. Look into my eyes. Hey, your body na. Nami ngumuntu. Ilegama. Look into my eyes. I
All I want to do is to
Good afternoon, everybody. And I want to say to all of you, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. And for those of you that had the time to listen to that song, you know, it just once again reminds us as women that there's no excuse for abuse. So I want to say again, thank you for making the time to be at the 6th African Universities Gender Equality Forum. This time we're hosting it as the Shared Value Africa Initiative, and it's the It's Not Okay movement. Can you see I've got my GBV It's Not Okay buff on today? So, and we are hosting it with the University of Cape Town today. And I want to say thank you to our colleagues at the University of Cape Town that stepped up to be part of this. And today we've got a really great lineup of speakers. We've got some young voices, we've got some experienced voices to talk to us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Diggy, I must step in just quickly to just let you all know, Diggy, our host today is having some technical issues. You know, we are in a time of load shedding here in South Africa. To not be dramatic about it at all. But Diggy, I don't know if you're back. I thought I heard your voice there. Okay. Are you able to say something, Diggy? Okay. I know she's here, but she's still on mute. Yes, so I think what I'll do while we're waiting for Diggy to
I'm
come
back,
in.
Vuyo.
Oh, there we go.
I'm just going to keep my camera off if that's okay. Is that okay? Okay. So sorry. Thank you, Vuyo, for stepping in there. Yeah, we're in the world of load shedding. I want to just put my camera off to say thank you again for everybody being here for the 6th African Universities Gender Equality Forum. And I want to say thank you again to the University of Cape Town for stepping up to host it with us. We've got a really great lineup of speakers and a panel discussion today, our young voices and our more experienced voices as well. And I think when I sat back and I looked at the 16 days of activism, you know, I often ask myself, yes, we've got this theme, unite, you know, we've got to invest to prevent violence against women and girls. And I want to just say, for us, every time we host the African Universities Gender Equality Forum, the purpose of the forum is to create a platform for universities to unite. You know, and we all got to unite against this violence against women and girls. And we need to find between us possible best practices so that we can scale and learn from each other. So if you're part of a university, and this is a call out to everybody there, if you're part of a university that wants to become part of the African Universities Gender Equality, please reach out to us, because the power lies in the collective, you know, when we want to bring about change. And I guess before today, you know, I went and looked again at 16 days of activism. I mean, we've had it for the last 32 years. We've had 16 days of activism. And then I always ask myself, where are we today with violence against women and girls? You know, we talk about it more. I'm sure, you know, you've all maybe experienced that we do talk about it a little bit more, but there's still a huge stigma attached to being a victim, or even being, you know, getting people to believe that you are a victim. And sadly, the violence continues. However, we pray as a Shared Value Africa initiative and the It's Not Okay movement that if we host events like this, we will create more and more awareness that one day
It seems the problems are persisting. Lola, am I correct?
Yes, we've lost Diggy again.
Okay. Apologies again, everyone. I think what I would perhaps just to I want to say switch up our energy and to take us from the welcome. You know, that Diggy was giving everyone and setting, I hope you can see me. Yes. And setting our tone, right, as to, I think, you know, the disparities being what they are in our society with regards to, you know, gender-based violence, with regards to, you know, discrimination of this kind. And for us, you know, using a platform like this to, you know, be able to integrate the voices and expertise, right, of you know, the academic I want to say, community, but of course within that, are the voices of young people and the work, their hopes and, their ideas even and perspectives when it comes to, addressing this scourge that's been with us, for multiple decades, multiple generations, of course. And I think as we get started and just to have a little bit of engagement, I know some of our attendees have already started saying hello in the chats, commenting on Tiki's backdrop there in paradise. More than welcome to just quickly tell us where you're dialing in from, your name, country, an institution, right? If that is relevant for you. And I think what we'll do as we do that as well, perhaps we can call up the first poll, Lolo, to just get a little bit of, engagement happening with our audience that is here. So I think for us, just broadly, right, and being aware that we've got various, I want to say, perspectives, as I mentioned earlier, let's just hear from you. How well do you think you understand gender equality, right? So, going broader, are you quite comfortable? You've got a good idea? It's a term that sometimes you hear a lot of, but maybe not necessarily are confident to think that you can participate in conversations around gender equality, or just, not sure what it means, right? So I think, being both from a private sector, civil society, and of course, academia and students here, our different perspectives are what help us as Shared Red Africa Initiative to look at how do we best drive the conversation forward. So I think even that as a starter, we would love to hear your thoughts, your perspectives, and even in the chat, if you've got any other, comments as we go along. I think for us, we really appreciate your input. It's a platform that we convene, but it is all about, engagement and having the conversation happening amongst everyone who's here, as well as, of course, our esteemed speakers that we are, giving this this profile to. So having said that, I think I will carry on if Tiki is back. Otherwise, I will happily move on and get to
I'm back.
Oh, okay. Here we go, Tiki. Over back to you. We're playing
Thank
volleyball
you.
today.
I think we're gonna keep everybody on their toes today, Vuyo, by jumping in between. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think on that poll we saw that 36% of you said that you're not sure about it, and I'm really happy that there's some of you that said you also want to know more about it, because it is our responsibility to learn more about what gender-based violence and what gender inequality looks like. I think we worked with the University of Rwanda about 2 years ago, and it was astounding to hear what students' understanding was of gender-based violence, and I think that we all have to really make sure that we have a very, very good grasp of gender-based violence. So, but with any further ado, I want to introduce our co-host, University of Cape Town, and Prof. Elalweni. I hope I'm going to get your surname right, Ramukhondu. And I want to say the Prof is the Deputy Vice Chancellor responsible for transformation, student affairs, and social responsiveness. And Prof, thank you so much for making the time to being here today. The Prof has also been at UCT for 25 years, focused on leading with integrity. Listen to this: leading with integrity, recognizing this to be pivotal in advancing transformation and excellence. And Prof, I just wish that more people would think like that. I really do. The Prof has also served as the UCT Council over 3 terms and served as chair of the UCT Academic Freedom Committee. The Prof's got a long list, but I'm not going to take all the time to introduce the Prof and give us all her accomplishments. But Prof, I just want to say thank you very much for being here, and thank you to UCT for being part of this. But over to you, Prof. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Tiki. Thank you for that generous welcome. And I want to also add my voice in really saying kudos to the organizers for the powerful way in which we started today's engagement. Bringing in artists to work with us in spreading the message is powerful. And it was really great to recognize one of our own graduates from the University of Cape Town in the lineup of artists. But yeah, I think it's really amazing that we get to have these conversations across generations. And with that, I want again to say welcome. And the name of the artist has come back as I was continuing. So Judith Sipuma is the artist that I recognized in that powerful video. Yeah, and again, really, really powerful. So again, Molweni, Dumelang, and Habari, a warm welcome to this important event co-hosted by ourselves, the University of Cape Town, with the Shared Value Africa Initiative and the hashtag It's Not Okay movement. And this forum, indeed, as Sticky has already indicated, provides a platform for scholars, professionals, and students from across the continent to confront and work towards the eradication of gender-based violence, which really is the most severe manifestation of gender inequality. And this, of course, for us, institutions of higher learning, recognizing that we're a microcosm of society, it's devastating that we face this scourge. But this is equally true for communities and our respective countries. So the agency to eradicate this pervasive social issue, societal issue, it's key because it's got significant adverse impact on health. It's got social and economic costs for individuals, families, communities, and nations. And the agency has never been more critical, underscoring the necessity for multi-sectoral approach. And today's conversation signifies collaboration and coordination between international and national partners from various sectors to ensure that we find robust and effective strategies. The role of academic institutions as microcosms of societies in this quest cannot be overstated. And the University of Cape Town, as a university in Africa, for Africa and the world, understands that its role extends beyond being a center for research as well as teaching and learning. UCT, for many of you who follow our activities, really has proven itself to have a good track record as a catalyst for social transformation, actively influencing policy, driving innovation, and shaping the minds of future leaders destined to guide our continent into the future. And this is a responsibility that we take very seriously. But I also believe that a future where gender equality transcends aspiration to become a lived reality for every girl and woman across the African continent should not just be a dream, but an achievable goal. And today's event unites us under a shared vision and lays the groundwork for pivotal discussions to achieve this goal. So as we engage today in discussions, let us share our wisdom and experiences. Let's not hold back. And let's remind ourselves of the power of collective action. Again, this is what Tiki also alluded to. We can only do this together. So let this forum be a launchpad for lasting change, a platform where we translate words into action, ensuring that gender equality permeates everyday life, every layer of our societies and institutions. And again, I want to say thank you for joining us on this important journey. I warmly welcome you to the African Universities Gender Equality Forum, Niyam Geleki. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I was going to say in Zulu, as they say, Ngiyabonga kakhulu. So I'm going to keep my video off. And Prof, I want to say that I agree so much with you that gender equality needs to become a lived reality. And I think, you know, again, it's up to us that it doesn't just not just stay words. We need to start taking that action, and also not only on 16 days of activism, but also 365 days a year. I don't know what you think about that, because we see it all the time. You know, that there's the International Women's Month, and then we have the August Women's Month, you know, and then we have our 16 days of activism. For me, it's about actually gender equality is about 365 days, not only when we have these special, you know, when we have these special celebrations. Yeah. So Prof, I want to say thank you so much. I'm going to move on because I know we're already behind because of my lack of connectivity. And I think what Prof was saying with our next speaker, Ivana, is that shared wisdom that we're looking at. And I hope that I know that Ivana, like me, is also a gender equality activist, but she is also a prominent figure known for her contribution to gender diversity and leadership development across not only Nigeria, but I think, so, you know, globally as well. And she runs a flagship program called Women in Leadership for female executives. And on top of that, Ivana is dialing in today from Berlin, but she's also the MD and CEO of PWR Advisory. And the PWR stands for Professional Women Roundtable. And in her work, Ivana focuses on diversity and inclusion. And I want to say welcome, Ivana, and thank you for making the time. I know you've got a very hectic schedule as well. And today, Ivana is going to talk about the importance of shifting mindsets, of gender equality and shifting mindsets. Thank you, Ivana. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kiki. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you today, and I'd like to thank the dynamic and visionary Tiki Bernard for inviting me to give this keynote speech. Nearly 40 years ago, I was just about to get into university. I remember lying there in my bed just after I had received my results, when I knew that I would be starting uni in a few months. I lay there thinking to myself, I am going to make such a difference. I am going to change the world. I think what I meant back then was what Steve Jobs meant by his famous quote, where he talks about making a dent in the universe. 40 odd years later, have I made a dent in the universe? Well, the jury's out, but the good news is I've still got quite a bit more time left to make that dent. I haven't yet done so. Today really is not about me, it's about you and your dent. My topic today is the importance of gender equality and shifting mindsets. According to the World Bank, gender inequity is costing the global economy $160 trillion in lost earnings over a lifetime. That's a lot of money. Here in Africa, according to research by McKinsey, $316 billion could be added to our economy in the continent by increasing women's participation in the economy. So when we deny women and girls the same opportunities as men, We are not just limiting their own individual potential, but we're also hindering the progress of our society and our economy. Everyone suffers from the knock-on effects of gender inequality. That's why we must do something about it. And each one of us can play a part. Each one of us has a role in driving change. When you look out across our continent, from one country to another, I think it's fairly obvious that we have a leadership crisis. And as John Maxwell tells us, everything rises and falls on leadership. I say that we need a new leadership paradigm on our continent, whether it's in politics, in academia, in the private sector, in the public sector, in those spaces where policies are formulated that affect you and I. We need a leadership that is more inclusive, one that puts the collective interest above self-interest, one that is more gender balanced. We need more women in leadership at all levels, in your student bodies, for instance, in your student unions, in academic governance structures, whether as heads of department, whether as deans, vice chancellors, everywhere. We need a change in our leadership paradigm. We need leadership that is more inclusive. We need leadership that is not just about driving and going out there to hunt, but is also about nurturing, that is compassionate, that is empathetic. And very importantly, as I've said, that places the collective above self-interest, one that is not driven by ego. So how do we shift mindsets and drive this much needed change? Well, I think it starts first with education. We must ensure that our education systems promote gender equality and challenge harmful stereotypes. This means teaching kids from a very young age about gender equality, about things like consent and respect for all individuals, about the dangers of violence, domestic violence. They must learn to have respect for everyone, regardless of gender. We must confront domestic violence. We must speak up against sexual harassment, which I have come to realize is fairly commonplace in our universities and higher institutions. If you know it is happening around you, I urge you to speak up. Use whatever influence or privilege you have to support the victim and to hold the perpetrator accountable. It is time for universities to put systems and processes in place to deal with this scourge. The silence is not acceptable any longer. It can't continue. Education is a powerful tool that can drive social change, and it is our responsibility to use it to challenge and change prevailing attitudes and beliefs. Secondly, we must promote equal opportunities for both gender in the workplace. This means eliminating gender stereotypes and gender-based pay gaps, providing policies that promote the retention of women and encourage them to take up leadership roles. When we create work environments that are inclusive, we are not only empowering individuals, but we're also driving innovation and economic growth, and our organizations are the better for it. Thirdly, we must challenge gender norms and stereotypes in our everyday lives. We confront them every day, they're around us. I think that we live in a culture that seeks to suppress and repress women. And it's time to kick back and kick against this. And we can do this whether we're women or whether we're men. It requires all of us to become active allies in the fight for gender equality. We can begin to challenge discriminatory language and behavior, support women in their personal, academic, and professional pursuits, and promote diverse representation in the media and other platforms. We must get used to thinking, who is missing in whatever rooms we're in? Who could be there, should be there, but is not there? I'd like you to think about this. What can you as an individual do? Because it's not about other people or what they do. It's about what we as individuals do. As I begin to draw to a close, I in particular want to talk about biases because they're all around us. And I want to challenge you to look within and confront your own biases. We all have them. As human beings, we're not wired to be inclusive. We're wired to hang out with people who look like us, people who talk like us, people who went to school with, people we have a common heritage with. Bias is a survival tactic, so it doesn't make us bad people. It just means that we are human. The key thing is to be self-aware and to watch out for our biases. And then learn to slow down our reactions and our responses in dealing with people so that we don't let our biases put people at a disadvantage. To create a level playing field for women in particular. Let us not shut women out because of our biases, whether they be cultural or otherwise. Be an advocate and an ally for gender equality. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Go out there and put your dent in the universe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ivana. What powerful words. We are the change that we've been waiting for. And I want to say to you that I wanted to ask you a question, actually. If we say that, and I know you gave the statistics, that we can add 360 billion to the African economy, if we get gender equality right. So now why are we not doing that? This is what I always say to myself. You look at all of these statistics. What is it that is, I guess, we go over that all the time. What is it that's preventing us from actually getting there? Is it that patriarchal society? But in your view, what are your thoughts on it?
I think that there are two elements to this. We have the structural and systemic constructs that were predominantly created by men for men. And we need to tackle those. We need to dismantle them. And a large part of that is by winning over men. I think that we need to be careful that we don't position the conversation as a battle between men and women, because we can't change anything without the support of men. So we need to engage with the men, pull them into the conversations, pull them into the rooms where the conversations are happening, and not to accuse them, but to challenge, to educate, and to inspire them. Every man has a mother, a sister, a daughter, a niece. So we can start to engage with them on that level by getting them to understand that this thing we're talking about affects their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, and engaging with them, getting them to understand, because sometimes actually they don't understand what the issues are. So in the workplace, when men start to crack those, those, I don't want to call them dirty jokes, but you know what I'm talking about. They may not understand how it makes women feel uncomfortable. So we must start to educate them. When those of us who are in senior positions of leadership, for instance, we have the privilege and the influence to be able to engage senior leaders, and they are often the ones who have the power. So we must challenge our peers and pull them into the conversation. So that's on one level. And part of that also is about policies, changing policies that are discriminatory to women or put them at a disadvantage in one way or another. We don't have enough time to go into all of that today. So let me leave that part there. The second part is also for us as women.
I think
because of all of the prejudice and bias that we confront. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just froze for a second.
Okay. I was just saying that because of the bias and the prejudice that we encounter as women when we show up, we often adopt certain self-limiting beliefs and behaviors. And in fact, we're conditioned socially from the time we're little girls, that girls are supposed to be seen and not heard. We're not supposed to talk too much. And it's time for us to begin to change all of those. If you show up as a strong woman like me and you have an opinion, you hit a backlash because they think, who does she think she is? She's breaking the gender norm. She's not acting like a woman, she's acting like a man. So it's time for us to show up and pull together, because I think when we get together and we start to share our stories, we begin to see that, look, I'm not the problem is the bias. And then we need to look within and begin to identify what are those messages in my head I'm carrying around that are limiting me and holding me back. And we also need to then start to learn how to build relationships strategically, how to network, because that comes very naturally to men. We are very relationship oriented, but networking is as transactional as it is relational. So these are a few things that we need to look out for as women.
Thank you.
And I think if we start
Yeah.
to belong to networks of women where we get some education and we share our stories, it goes a long way to help us to deal with this.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for that, Ivana. And I want to also ask everybody on this call today is one thing that you said, Ivana, is what can we as individuals do? And I just for myself, when I think we need to speak up, we need to look at those gender stereotypes and we need to look at our own unconscious bias because we've got to start somewhere. And I want to say thank you so much for making the time all the way out of Berlin to be with us today. And thank you very much, Ivana. So on to our next speaker. So if you followed us on LinkedIn or on Facebook, you would have seen that Dr. Kutia Ngutu from Strathmore University was going to be our next speaker. But we've got a very old friend of the African University's Gender Equality Forum here, and she's also a colleague of Dr. Kutia's as well. We really happy to once again, hello Lena, to welcome Lena Kachoki from the Strathmore Business School, and Lena is a member of the Leadership and Management faculty. She's a course leader at the Strathmore Business School Women in Leadership as well. And Lena's also, like me, a gender-based violence researcher. She's passionate about gender equality. And thanks, Lena, for standing in for Kutia and just stepping up so quickly. Really appreciate it. And Lena today is going to share with us gender equality in teaching and learning. And thank you, Lena, for being here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tiki. It's always a pleasure to join in this forum. And today I have a few slides to share. If you could make me co-host so that I can share my slides.
Can we do that, Lolo? I just want to ask our technical person, Lolo, to help with giving you permission, Lena.
Okay.
I know Lena is also the mom of 3 kids. Hey, how is Jake?
They're all very well. Thank you, Tiki. And thank you for your kind introduction. So at the beginning, you ran that poll on do we know about gender equality? And I thought to begin off my presentation, it's just 2 slides that I want to show. And it's my way of explaining what gender equality is all about and what is gender equity is all about, because I have a deep conviction that as we progress the conversation around gender equality, we should also move it to gender equity. So as the technical person makes me co-host, my topic today is gender equality in teaching and learning. And
hi there, Lena. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You're welcome to share.
Okay. Okay, here I go. So so I just have 2 images just to. So when you think of equality without going into academia and what is gender equality, what is gender equity, I always like sharing this slide that says that equality is giving everyone a shoe and equity is giving everyone a shoe that fits, because we need to now start progressing the conversation towards equity, yeah? And this other image here, the image on your left, on your right, actually, sorry, on your left shows equality, yeah? So here, everyone has been given a stepping stool, but we can see is the stepping stool effective, yeah? Then on the right, we have the equity. So, and with those, I can now begin my presentation. So, gender equality in teaching and learning. And I looked at this from the role of a lecturer in class, because one of the ways to progress this conversation is to look for teachable moments in class with the students, because it's sometimes we can assume that people understand what is gender equality, or sometimes we can assume that people understand what is gender-based violence, yeah? And if I was to ask today, what are some of the forms of gender-based violence that we know, other than the commonly known one, which is the physical abuse, the physical violence? Do we know other forms of gender violence? Maybe we can just put it there on chat. What are the other forms of gender-based violence? Economic abuse, yes, thank you. We have emotional abuse, thank you. Cyberbullying, yeah. Stalking, yeah. Physical abuse, yes, yeah. So thank you for sharing. So many times we are more aware about the physical abuse or the physical violence that we forget about the psychological violence, yeah, which sometimes can be even worse, you know. Then we have the socio-economic violence, which actually gender inequalities perpetuates. We have sexual violence, and sexual violence here includes the sexism remarks, yeah. So for us as a lecturer, for me as a lecturer, I try and look for teachable moments during classroom to pass on these messages to my students, to empower the students. And the good thing is you have both the female students and the male students, and you'd be amazed that when you're having these conversations, these kids, they are 19, 20-year-olds, are not aware about such existence of such forms of violence. And another way is to help them appreciate the need to speak up, because sometimes such violence happens, the students, if it happened to them, they tend to look at it from an inward point of view. They will start thinking, what did I do to deserve this? And as such, they don't speak up because maybe of the shame that comes or that is associated with it, yeah? So there's that encouragement that it's okay. Speak up about it. It's not about what you did. It's not about, yeah, it's an evil and people should speak up about it. Then another way that as lecturers we can help in all this is even in the classroom. How are the leadership positions within the classroom? In our university for the undergraduates, we have what we call module leaders. And many times, and I have seen it over and over again, when you go to the class and you ask who would like to be the module leader, you can guess the gender that will more or less volunteer. Many times it's the male. They will raise their hand and raise it very straight and say, I volunteer to be that. So what can we do is also to encourage the female students to also volunteer for such positions. So how can we create, again, an inclusive environment where we can nurture these leaders, even with basic things like leadership within the class, is to even create two positions that we will have two module leaders, and then they can agree on how they want to split the leadership roles. That way you're nurturing leadership from the classroom. Then also another way is what I call creating the classroom outside. Sometimes the classroom setup can be very formal, yeah, very technical. As a lecturer, you're there, you're just teaching the subject matter. So creating a classroom outside helps you to discuss things that are not necessarily within the technical subject that you're teaching, but also around things like leadership. Many times, as Tiki was introducing, she mentioned that I am the course leader of the Women in Leadership program in Strathmore University Business School. So what I do, I always go back to the class and I read out for them the statistics around women leaders, yeah? Because of late, when I introduce the course, the first question I get is, okay, so what are you doing about men? Yeah, I always find that question very interesting because I say, yes, a lot has been done about women, but we are not yet there because the leadership statistics about women leaders are not telling the story. So we have to keep at it. So I give them the statistics. I give them the statistics around the pay gaps. So creating those opportunities within and outside the classroom. Ivana alluded to also universities creating policies that can support this gender equality, gender equity when it comes to leadership position within the universities. Yeah, it's very key for that, because as you teach the young minds in universities, sometimes it's not about what you teach, it's the actions on the ground. Can they see that there are women deans, for example? Because if you talk and there's no action, then it's what are you saying? Universities need to lead by example. Also creating an opportunity. I've seen, and especially in African culture, our culture can really hold us back. Yeah, our culture can really hold us back. So you find, like in my university, we have students from different parts of Kenya, and these different parts of Kenya, there's a way the woman is viewed. So even in class, you find you have students who can answer questions, but because of their background, they are only, they are told that you're to be seen, but you're not to be heard. So it's to break such stereotypes by asking and pointing out, like, could you answer that question, and encouraging them to do that. And I've actually seen improvement when you encourage the students to speak up, to answer questions. They start feeling, wow, I have an opportunity to speak. So also calling out the quiet ones, because they could be quiet, not because that they don't know, but because of the culture where they come from. Yeah. So as I sum up, I would say that if we are going to advance this conversation, we need to be very intentional about it. As lecturers, intentional how we teach in class, how we are passing on the messages, but also the courage to talk about these forms of violence. In corporate, you may find that this form of sexual violence could be sexism remarks. Yeah. So as a leader, if you are in a position of influence and there's this sexist remarks that are passed, we should have the courage to call them out, the courage to call out the perpetrator. Otherwise, if we are not intentional and if we don't have the courage, we may not progress very, very, very far. And Tiki, that's all I had for today.
Thank you, Lena. You know, what I wanted to say is that sometimes in certain environments, we don't, as women, realize even that it's sexual harassment, you know, and that's where we need to get that training done, because I think, and also in lots of environments, and specifically in our learning environments, like at our universities, you know, we need to be conscious of that, and we need to speak up when that's happening, because we hear about it. We hear about lecturers and students all over the place, and we also hear about how universities are trying to cover it up, you know, which is also not right, you know, because it's got to do with how do they protect their, you know, how do they protect their image? How do they protect their name? So therefore, the victim is always the one that actually suffers, because the victim never gets a chance sometimes even to raise a voice, you know, and those are the type of things that we need to change at university. So Lena, I want to say thank you so much, but you did say something. I do think that there's still not enough women in leadership positions at universities. And I think we need to try and really push for that. So Lena, thank you very much for once again being part of our African Universities Gender Equality Forum. I think, do we have time for another poll? I'll be led by the timekeepers. Do we have time or not? Hello?
With the panel, and then we can move on with the
Pardon?
panel first. Move on with the panel first.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to go to Hope, and Hope, I hope I pronounce your surname right. Nabalajo, is that right? But you can help me right when you come on screen. So Hope is going to be the facilitator of the panel. I met her last week, very dynamic young lady. She's a journalist in training at the University of Nairobi, at UNC TV. And Hope, my hope is that through your work, you're going to become that strong voice for gender equality and fighting gender-based violence. So I'm going to hand over to you now to introduce your panel and also to tell us what your real surname is, not the one that I said. So Hope, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiki. My name is Hope Nabalayo. That's my name, but my surname is Wambilianga. So I'm Hope Nabalayo Wambilianga, and you've done my introduction justice. But to add to it, I'm also a member of 16 Ways for 16 Days, which is an African feminist youth-led organization based in South Africa, but has crossed over to Kenya. And over the few years we've been functioning, we've managed to host a series of online webinars. And one of our most recent achievements is hosting our first live event a few months ago. And just to show my appreciation for this forum, it's very timely, not only because we're approaching the 16 days of activism, but also because we're living at a time and age where youth voices matter more than ever. And where else to get brilliant young minds than in African universities? And in this panel, we are lucky to be joined by young leaders who are part of learning institutions, who I feel like I should let introduce themselves very briefly in no particular order, but we have Lesedi, we have Siobhan, we have Simnikiwe, I hope I got that right, and Kate. So I will let you introduce yourselves briefly just before we get into the deeper discussion. Since I can see you, Siobhan, perhaps you could start.
Hi everyone, my name is Siobhan David. I am joined with Hope in the 16 Ways to 16 Days organization, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Siobhan. Simnikiwe.
Hi everyone, my name is Simnikiwe Nigita. I am from the University of Cape Town, South Africa. I'm currently a gender advisor for the Office of Inclusivity and Change here at UCT, and I'm a gender advisor and an agent of change educator. And I'm currently doing my Bachelor of Social Sciences honors in Gender Studies and Transformation. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Lesedi.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. My name is Lesedi Ngubeni. I am a final year LLB student at the University of Pretoria, where I am also the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Tribunal, which is the student, or rather the judicial branch of student governance. And I'm also part of 16 Ways for 16 Days alongside Siobhan and Hope.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Kate sends her apologies for not being able to join at the moment, but she will once she figures out her technical difficulties. But for now, I'd just like us to start on a light note where we could all share where our passion for this cause started and how the experience has been so far, seeing that we're all involved in activism and advocacy around the conversation. we could start backwards now. So maybe we could go with Lisedi, then Simikiwe, then Siobhan.
Sorry, Hope, if you could just repeat the question.
The question was where our passion started for advocating for this cause and activism in the gender equality, gender-based violence space. Yeah.
Okay. So for myself personally, it started in high school. So I went to a I'm happy to make a lot of
I think we're losing you. Okay, I think we could skip Lisedi. He's breaking, right? So let's go to Simikiwe, then we could get back to him later.
I hope he can hear us because he's still unmute.
And they would only
Africa.
share their struggles with me, as we heard earlier, but it's not.
Hi, Lesedi.
Okay, Sim.
I wish I had heard what Lesedi was saying, honestly. But yeah, I am Simikiwe from the University of Cape Town. As I had mentioned, in my undergrad, I did a Bachelor of Social Sciences degree, and I majored in social development and gender studies. So within those two majors, there was a lot that I learned in terms of how our histories within the African continent interact with violence and how GBV is very much so detrimental to our economies, our social environments, and also just within society and how safe society is. And because GBV and rather even violence in a sense has been so normalized in Africa, having conversations and coming up with solutions in spaces like this is so very much important. It's very close to my heart. You know, as a person who really goes into, you know, researching gender studies right now in my honors, I wanted to also be within the space and within the field of, you know, talking about these conversations more regularly. And that's the work that I do with the Office of Inclusivity and Change as a gender advisor and as an agent of change. And what we basically do as ACEs is basically that we, you know, we enter spaces, lecture halls, and we talk to students about consent. We talk to students about, you know, GBV. We talk to them about gender equality, and we try and make it a space where we as peers and students can speak to our peers in the most normal of ways and not make it too academic to the point where people are bored or don't want to have to actually talk about the issue. Rather have a simple conversation where students can also share their perspectives and we can come up with more feasible solutions and even maybe share perspectives that we've never considered before. So for me, that's where I get my passion. It's taking the academic side of everything, putting it in a space where everybody can interact and having very healthy, very non-toxic, non-patriarchal solutions in how we can then tackle GBV and violence within society against all humanity.
That's beautiful. How about you, Siobhan?
As a student, working within the structure of the universities and also starting organizations outside the universities to try to influence universities, I think as students, you always have to battle with, do I work inside the institution or work outside the institution? Working inside the institution, you have the personnel, a lot of the times the funding, the professionalism, some existing structure to build on. But when students sit at these tables in these conversations, we often feel like invited guests, and especially if we're standing there by ourselves, it's very difficult to influence and exceptionally difficult to voice the sense of urgency coming from the student side. Other than a passive aggressive email signed off or something like that, it's very difficult to try to instill a sense of urgency, especially when universities' decision-making process is often 4 times a year, and if there's no quorum, it gets deferred and things like that, especially with the bigger decisions, bigger policy changes. So my experience has always been trying to balance working within the structure and working outside the structure. Outside the structure, you can build a very big organization. I always promote organization, mobilization, education, trying to install some sense of activism because I've never, for any issue at a university, in my 6 years of being at university, I never found a single issue on campus that only one student felt strongly about. If you get the message out there, you will always find people to join you in your struggle, to join you in a more unified voice. And whether that means helping you email lecturers before a Senate meeting to say, hey, this is going to be discussed, please be there, otherwise it's not going to be quorum, and then the decision is going to be deferred, and then I'm going to graduate and leave, and then someone else has to take over. That's always our limitation as students, is that hopefully we will graduate and someone else has to push the struggle. So again, it's a little bit more of a sense of urgency than the administrators or the lecturers who if they want to, will stay in and make these decisions for a long time. But yeah, balancing working within the system and working outside the system has been a very interesting battle internally for myself. But as I've been a graduate now, obviously I'm pretty much only working outside, but uh, gaining research and gaining diagnoses from within the system with people like Hope, like we said, you are in institutions currently, they're kind of getting both the inside and the outside perspective, working in organizations like this and being part of webinars like this.
Oh, thank you, Siobhan. I can see Lisedi is back. If you're not able to turn on your video, you could also just unmute and share your journey so far.
Thank you, Hope. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I think my passion started in high school. I said that I went to a co-educational school, so males and females, and I happened to have a lot of female friends. So I used to listen to their struggles, their fears and stuff like that. And from there, I realized the importance that it's not only a fight or cause that should come from a female's perspective, also from a male's perspective. However, we should more listen than speak. We should rather assist. So that's what I've always wanted to do. Advocated for that the fight is also ours. And I just realized, like, transitioning into university from high school, there's still that kind of toxic boy culture, like the locker room talk and stuff like that. And all of that aids or adds to gender inequality. All of the discussions that happen in those types of situations. So for me, it's always been about, speaking to my friends, speaking to whoever I can that, no, this is not the way.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you all for sharing. I think from my end, I started being very interested in activism when I did join the university, because I knew all along I wanted to do journalism. But as a media person, there's little you can do to measure how your communication is being received. Actually, we're constantly reminded that our job is to inform. So you can't inform and make sure the policies are created, like you'll just stretch thin. So I figured I can be a journalist and I could still be an activist, and that way I kill two birds with one stone. So this especially happened when my school initiated something called O3 Plus that focuses on student well-being. So we've been working with UNESCO and other universities in Kenya, including Mount Kenya University, Kenya Medical Training College, and the University of Nairobi. And so far, it's been a great opportunity. Then also meeting with 16 Ways for 16 Days has really propelled my passion for the cause. And since we have all shared that we're all part of this work, we can now admit that gender-based violence is real, gender inequality is real, and this is something we're all experiencing across different institutions. But now just looking into our learning institutions, our universities, I'd really like to understand some challenges that you might face in what you're trying to achieve. Because one thing I have learned in my experience is You cannot use the word mitigate while talking about gender-based violence, while talking about gender inequality. It's discouraged because you really can't solve this issue, rather provide solutions. So maybe we could talk about some challenges we've experienced along the way and how we've gone about solving them. We can start with you, Sim.
I think the challenges that I've noted within just the university spaces, and also just how students communicate, is the gap between having the solutions and having these problems being identified and having conversations and coming up with the solutions, and then wanting to take the action, but also not having the power to fully take the action. It's also the disappointment sometimes as young activists that we feel when you advocate for something and you're really trying to battle through gender equality and you're trying to, campaign against and be an activist against GBV and SGBV on campus. But, we still live in the reality that on our campuses, sexual and gender-based violence does exist. There are cases being done, and sometimes you do get discouraged by the continuation of it being there after having so many conversations, so many spaces where solutions and students are talking and they're admitting that it's wrong, but then it still happens. And I think that also goes back to then how do we then take all of the solutions that we're bringing to the table as young people, and also consider that society doesn't stop, that we do live in an evil society and bad things really happen, and how do we then become undiscouraged when those bad things happen and continue with the fight. I've seen a lot of students who have joined spaces and joined activisms against SGBV and GBV on campuses, and they're discouraged when something happens and it doesn't go well through the institutional ropes of going to getting justice, basically. And part of activism is also seeing justice being taken in spaces, because you then see how important the fight is and that the fight will amount to something, even if it changes one person's life. So I think that how we then get to the other side is definitely having an intersectional point of view, considering all aspects that influence, the scope of gender-based violence, the scope of SGBV on campuses. We have to understand the systems that govern colonialism, that govern patriarchy and sexism, that make it so normal for SGBV and GBV to be, something that exists so normally in our universities. So I think that's how we can maybe reach those spaces and gaps, and also kind of getting that real power that can make policy changes, that can actually come in with resources and how to get the best people in and to help, let's say, with survivors who are on campus, So I think that's where, for me, the hardship lies, or rather the discouragement lies as an activist, is doing all the work and sometimes not seeing it come to fruition because of so many systems that are tied to colonialism and just our history as well.
Thank you so much for that. I quickly want to go to Lisedi just because of time. And it's really interesting that he is the current Chief Justice of the University of Pretoria Student Court. And I'm just curious on how the court has managed to go about such cases on campus, if you have experienced such cases, and if students feel safe enough to approach such a body for help.
Thank you for the question, Hope. So yes, as a structure, we have tried to, be an open space for all. However, when it comes to cases of GBV or sexual harassment and things like that, we don't necessarily have the jurisdiction, so that gets referred to legal services of the University of Pretoria. And in in dealing with this, the university has also opened up a new office called the Transformation Office. So that has also helped in dealing with such issues.
Oops. I believe the challenges Simnikiwe has shared cut across most of learning institutions. And if you meet Shivan or if you interact with Shivan, he will remind you that he's not a student anymore. So just from your experience having left university, do you feel like you mentioned in your introduction that you still carry on with these initiatives. So how is that transition for you, and how can young university students still transition from their work on campus and even beyond? Because I believe it doesn't end enough in universities.
That's a very good question. I've become, after 6 years of doing, if you think about, okay, I went to the University of Cape Town, and if you just have to look at the headlines. From the time I started during the start of Rosemars Fall, it was pretty much a roller coaster from then until the graduation, especially I spent the full 6 years there. You can imagine the experience I had, the leadership that I rubbed shoulders with, but also, the changes that I saw from a institution that would be adamant that a change was impossible. Like, there's nothing that you can do. This is how it is. Then one thing happens, and suddenly the change happens overnight. The policy's drafted, the vote's done, it's done. Like, now it's official policy. Things can happen quickly. Keeping the energy to make it quickly and believing that it can happen quickly within your, not lifetime, but in your university lifetime, from the time you start to the time you graduate. It's very easy to be defeated by the administration, by the institutional walls, by not making quorum. It's just like small things just get to you, and you're like, oh, now you have exams, and then something happens here, something happens there, and now the whole year's finished. Now you have to wait for the next cycle of meetings to make the decisions. Transitioning out of university has shown me that after going through this process once, and I think once is enough, after going through the process once, I carry with me so much institutional knowledge of how to actually get things done that I could even write a book about, guiding a student on how to get things done. If this doesn't happen, you do this. If this doesn't happen, you do this. If this doesn't happen, you do this. But carrying with me that institutional knowledge and then not being involved with the institution at all, means that someone has to make the same mistakes again and again and again. Then after they graduate, the new person will have to make the same mistakes, and then nothing gets done. So I feel like it's my duty, to at least educate some of the students within the institution who are willing to do the work inside the institution, to give them advice, sit down with them, and educate again, mobilize, organize, and educate the students who are currently dealing with the same problems with the same institution that we dealt with when you were a student. And as long as I can create some kind of network or base so that they don't have to start from scratch, at the bare minimum, that they don't have to start from scratch. So there has been work done in the past, and yes, we tried this, and yes, we tried this, but this did work. As long as that is there, and as long as people who have gone through this process give back to the institutions, I really think that as long as it doesn't keep starting from scratch over and over and over again, we will see a continuous process happen.
You've just told us in so many words, but little words, that it's our responsibility now to pass that mandate down to those people we leave behind. And I feel like that's something we should take seriously, and with all the support from all the different stakeholders. And that's one more reason I'm very grateful for such a forum. And that is honestly a great place to end the discussion, since we are limited for time. We could talk and talk and talk, but just before we wrap up, perhaps we could all give a parting shot, a call to action for different stakeholders, and we will hand over the discussion to the next segment. So, Lesedi?
Yes, thank you, Hope. So I think for myself, especially within the university context or university space, the four main issues that I've identified is safety, education, participation, and action. So I think this just calls for all of the various bodies or authorities on university to, come to the party, especially something like safety. At the University of Victoria, they've introduced the Green Route project, whereby from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., you can get a security guard to walk you home and stuff like that. So it's just a call for action from everyone. Even if you don't think you're supposed to be a part of it, you should. Education, we could get a compulsory module, a year module about gender-based violence, gender inequality, because the fight is the fight is for all of us to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Simnikiwe.
Thank you, Hope. My parting words would be to definitely echo what Prof was saying, having collective reflections. I definitely believe in the co-creation of knowledge, the co-creation of communal knowledge between people. I think that there is great power in having conversations that are solution-centered and not creating echo chambers where we basically just put academic references and say this is wrong and this needs to be changed, but we're not really coming up to the front to have these conversations as people that can enact change. So I think continue having those conversations, but let those conversations be solutions-based. Let them have, the researchers in those conversations, the people with the power, the people with the money and the resources to have these changes being done in those conversations. And let's break down the walls and the echo chambers that we create in order to feel like we need to be cool to talk about GBV. You don't need to be cool. You don't need to have a master's or a PhD in gender studies to speak about such issues. Because such issues are societal issues, it means that they have to be, enacted and solved by society. And I think this is a collective effort, and it needs a collective reflective space continuously in order for great and real change and effective and sustainable change to be enacted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Siobhan.
My parting message would be, you don't have to change everything at once. You can find something very specific to change. It could be a lecturer offers an optional class, but it's in the evening, and you notice that it's only men attending because it's a far walk late at night for the women to walk back to the public transport. Getting security guards there or getting that pathway lit. It can be as small as that. I'm not saying that you have to dream small, but I'm saying that you don't have to change everything at once. And the confidence that you gain and the institutional experience that you gain from making these small changes can really give you the confidence and the momentum and the organizational capacity to make much bigger demands from the university, but also the power and the voice to make those demands.
Great. So that has been it for the panel. But just before we close it off, I just want to open the floor to anyone in the audience who might have a question or comment or something to add to the conversation. You could either unmute or just type it in the chat box if you're a bit shy. Then we could talk about it more. Panani, I can see you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Hope. Thanks, Siobhan, Lisedi, and Snikiwe. Yeah, quite moving because sometimes we can't solve problems without involving everyone to come up with solutions. I was quite interested, Lisedi and Siobhan, when we were talking about, a small thing such as, security guards escorting, students at night and so on. But I'm also thinking security guards are also human. to what extent are these people trained to make sure that they don't turn out, you know, that golden path that we're trying to pave, having to come back and bite us, to find that the very same security guards are the ones who have perpetrated this gender-based violence. Thanks.
Siobhan, would you want to take that? Or perhaps our previous speakers could also chime into the conversation? Or Lisedi, Simi,
Oh,
Chiwe.
okay. Thank you. So I think that is a very important question and observation. I don't even really know the answer to that, because obviously, you know, that's the situation that we currently find ourselves in. The only solution I could suggest is obviously education toward the security guards, and then also if we're talking about a green path, green routes could be filled with cameras, and you know, you send your friend your live location, stuff like that. Obviously, it's not the situation that we want to find ourselves in, especially because it's now making the problem or the situation other people's problems, like females' problems, when it shouldn't be in the first place. It should be us as males taking accountability.
Thank you, Lisedi. I feel like this question would be answered by Tiki.
If I could chime in, I think within that measurement also, Fanani, there has to be a level of trust in the people that I guess the university employs as well. I think that's why a lot of universities also go through a lot of criminal record, personality testing. But I definitely encourage the comments that we said he had put up of educating the people that are employed by institutions about gender equality, GBV, and the importance of safety. It's not every doctor that's the best doctor around. It's not every police officer that is going to be the best police officer. And I guess there would be some level of trust that we would have to employ with the people that are employed by the university. I mean, for example, our CPS officers here at UCT, they're very, very kind. They do the system. We have like a walking system here at UCT where CPS officers could be called through, and young ladies or young men or people from the university, if they need assistance with walking, and it's just after hours, our CPS officers are always there to escort them to their residences or to nearby off-campus places as well. So I think there has to be a level of trust that we can also employ to the people that are going to be enacting or that are going to be within those roles. Because if there isn't a level of trust and there's a high level of doubt, then I think the energy of such will also not be great for whatever solution is coming up. In every solution, there always has to be human error that has to be accounted for. But if we're going to come up with solutions that need humans to be part of the solution, there has to be some level of trust that we can have in the community that we're in as well.
I think just to add to what you've said, I can give an example of my studio. There was this security officer who was brought, and he was literally texting all the girls in the studio, because we usually sign in and like leave our numbers. And most of the new people who had come in were like first-year students. So I would picture myself in first year, and I was like, I knew nothing in first year. So as much as this guy was fired after we complained, now the older people complained, we took it upon ourselves also to educate the young girls, because I feel like it's a two-way thing, considering that we might not know that when somebody talks to you some type of way or says something, they're alluding different things, and that would just lead to further damage that could be avoided if us ourselves knew when we're in jeopardy. So it's also important to educate those who are vulnerable, as well as educate the ones who are coming into these institutions. Yeah. I can see a few comments in the chat. If there is anyone else who has something to say, if not, we could hand it over to Tiki. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, Lesedi and Sim. I mean, really interesting discussion, because as young people, you know, that's what I always want to say. You hold the future of Africa in the palm of your hand. I know we've given you this really hard work to do, but I feel very encouraged today listening to you, because I think it is, as you just said, Hope, it is about, if you've been, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing as an activist, because I'm a gender-based violence survivor. So therefore, I want to talk to those that are possibly getting involved in that relationship. You know, we already there's language used that's not, you know what I mean, that you cannot accept. So we've got to, the older generation that knows, we need to help our young ones. And as you said, Hope, the first years coming in, try and help those that are vulnerable in order to empower them as well, to say that it's not okay. You know, what somebody older texting, like you just said now, it just isn't okay from that perspective. So I want to say to all of you, thank you so much for being here today. And Hope, remember, you're going to be my journalist, okay? So I've got a challenge for you going forward, and we'll be following you, Lesedi and Siobhan and Sim, to see what you know what I mean, what you've accomplished, because that would really be nice as well. And good luck with everything that you do. I want to say I'm going to hand over now to a colleague of mine to close off for us, and Joy Ruhudo. Joy is part of our team as the Shared Value Africa Initiative and Shift Impact Africa. She was part of the team when we launched on the 18th of August, the Shared Value Africa Initiative. We launched our Gender Equality Implementation Guide, and Joy was part of the team that worked on the guide. But that's not all that Joy does. She's a very results-driven senior leader. She was a senior director of public affairs at the END Fund. And for those of you that don't know, the END Fund focuses on neglected tropical diseases. And then Joy went off and became an entrepreneur and started Feel Joy Consulting, which is the passion that's driving her today, other than working with us, you know, on the gender equality side as well. So Joy, I want to hand over to you to close off for us and just give us your thoughts on the discussions today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Tiki. And I think I want to just start off by saying thank you to every single person who's joined this conversation today, because it really is such an important conversation. Do forgive me if you're picking up on any background noise. I suppose it's a privilege that we're able to work remotely the way we do now. So I'm actually on the road, parked on the side of the road, pretending that I'm not blazing hot, but I think the temperatures are above 30 degrees Celsius. But what I wanted to just share about the conversation and what I was picking up today is just how incredible it is that I think we're taking up this opportunity to have a platform to unite on an issue that is so important. And I think Tiki touched on it earlier on, saying that, you know, we're able to take the lead. And I think it's really imperative that women take the lead. And I say that tongue in cheek because I recognize that there are a lot of men on the call as well. And I appreciate that and applaud you. I say that as a mother of 2 girls and a son. My son and my husband are just as vicious in trying to advocate for gender equality. So I think it's incredible when we have other men joining us in this cause. And then I know we talk a lot about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the African Union and other things, but I think we have an opportunity as women to stand together and unite around this issue and actually take the lead and show them how it's done to unite across the continent. I love the fact that earlier on today we spoke in the poll, the first poll I think it was, they spoke about 55% of the people surveyed that they understand gender equality very well. So I think what I kept thinking as we were going through this conversation is, we know a lot, but how many of us are making sure that the people around us know and understand gender equality in the same way that we do? And we heard, I mean, we spoke earlier on, I think it was Ivana who was talking about how girls are conditioned from when they're children, that we're socialized this way. And so I remember, you know, many years back, being, I'm a Shona girl, and recognizing that a woman who would return home to parents because something had happened, they'd been beaten by their husband, that they would return to their parents and their parents would say to them, okay, this is what happens. That's how marriage is. Sorry, my love, and pack them back up and send them back to the abuser. And so for me, I think it's important that we keep having these conversations, that we keep sharing the knowledge that we have. I mean, if it's correct that knowledge is power, then my question to you is, what are you doing with that power? What are you doing with your power? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying put yourself in harm's way. I'm just saying be tactical about how you conscientize others, because we don't all know the same thing. I mean, one of the speakers today was talking about the different forms of abuse. So oftentimes people just think of gender-based violence as physical abuse, but there's so many other forms of abuse. So share what you know. Very early on in my career, I worked for an organization that used to say, if you see it, you own it. And what it meant is that if you observe something happening that's offside, or even if it is that you see a piece of litter on the ground, if you see it, you need to own it and be part of the solution. So my challenge to you all is that let's be part of the solution. Let's continue to have these conversations and let's continue to, and that's my challenge to you. So thank you so much for all coming back and appreciate it. Tiki, can I hand over back to you?
Thank you, Joy. Can you hear me? I don't know if my thing is frozen.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I don't know what's it's also the end of my, I think, of my load shedding, but I don't know why you can't see me now, but it's okay. So thank you, Joy, for that. I'm really sorry that we just dropped everybody off at the last minute, but it was a good conversation, and a huge apology for you know, just ending it so abruptly. I want to wish you all a great 16 days of activism, and please raise your voice and be the change that we're looking for. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening and a nice weekend when it comes along. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Joy.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.